We're gonna start this week's episode with a little segment I like to call Serial Killer Corner. Can you guess what that segment's gonna be about, Joe?
Serial killers.
You got it. You're such a smart guy. That's the reason I'm paying you the big bucks.
I didn't even finish medical school.
Right. That's why you're making $10 an hour on this podcast. $10 whole dollars.
$10 a week.
$10 a week.
And he still gives me a $10.99 like an asshole.
It's at least $600. Is it? Would it be?
You don't have to.
I don't have to.
No, I'm saying if you're sober 6, I think you still can.
Uh-huh.
But I think you legally don't have to give it.
Uh-huh. But I need to make sure that, I need to make sure that this podcast is GAP compliant, John.
Mm-hmm. GAP compliant.
A little joke from earlier. So yeah, Serial Killer Corner. I like to start this segment by reading a letter, John.
Cool.
Do you mind if I read a letter?
Well, you're gonna do it if I say yes or no. So.
But I want to make sure if you mind or not. So.
No, go ahead.
All right. All right.
The lost art of letter writing.
Yeah, it is a lost art, right? Nobody writes letters anymore. What's the last letter you wrote?
Probably to like a parole board for like somebody. I don't know.
Have you ever known somebody who was in jail? That's the only way you can really talk to them, right? In reality, like consistently.
You can go visit.
Yeah, but who wants to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm just anyway.
Yeah.
Read me your letter.
All right. So I'm gonna read this letter, John. My dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894, a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco for Hong Kong, China. On arriving there, he and 2 others went ashore and got drunk. When they returned, the boat was gone. At that time, there was famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 a pound. So great was the suffering among the very poor that all children under 12 were sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. You could go in any shop and ask for steak, chops, or stew meat. Part of the naked body of a boy or girl would be brought out and just what you wanted cut from it. A boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body, and sold as veal cutlet, brought the highest price. John stayed there so long he acquired a taste for human flesh. On his return to NY, he stole 2 boys, one 7, one 11. Took them to his home, stripped them naked, tied them in a closet. Then burned everything they had on. Several times every day and night he spanked them, tortured them, to make their meat good and tender. First he killed the 11-year-old boy.
This guy's hilarious.
Because he had the fattest ass, and of course the most meat on it. Every part of his body was cooked and eaten except the head, bones, and guts. He was roasted in the oven.
He was picky.
He was roasted in the oven, all of his ass, boiled, broiled, fried, and stewed. Shit. The little boy was next. Went the same way. At that time, I was living at 409 East 100th Street, near Right Side. He told me so often how good human flesh was, I made up my mind to taste it. On Sunday, June the 3rd, 1928, I called on you at 406 West 15th Street, brought you pot cheese, strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her. On the pretense of taking her to a party, you said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester, and I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped off all my clothes off. I knew if I did not, I would get her blood on them. When all was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and tried to run down the stairs. I grabbed her and she said she would tell her mama. First I stripped her naked. How did she kick, bite, and scratch? I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms, cook and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. I did not fuck her though. I could have, had I wished. She died a virgin.
Is that the end?
That's the end, John.
You want me to guess which comedian this is?
Yes, what comedian do you think this was, John?
I'm just kidding.
Terrible set.
I'm just kidding, yeah.
So that letter was written. Have you ever heard of a man named Albert Fish?
Yes.
They called him the Gray Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, the Boogeyman. So that letter was written by Albert Fish.
Isn't he technically killed more people than any other serial killer?
That is the rumor. It's never been confirmed. He's only had 3 confirmed victims. But in the
it was kids, right?
It was mostly kids.
It was all like kids.
It was mostly kids. But they believe maybe he could be responsible to up to 100 people. So that letter he wrote to the mother of a little girl he ate.
Jesus.
The little girl's name was Grace Budd. So this was crazy.
I think we're going with something lighter this week.
The next segment will be a little lighter.
What year was this?
This was in 1928.
Okay.
So let me tell you a little backstory behind the murder of Grace Budd. That was a little girl that he killed and ate. So on May 25th, 1928, Albert Fish saw a classified advertisement in the Sunday edition of the New York World that read, this is how the advertisement had said, "Young man, 18, wishes position in country. Edward Budd, 406 West 15th Street." So Albert Fish read this advertisement. He was 58 years old at the time. He visited the Budd family in Manhattan under the pretense of hiring Edward for a job. He later confessed that his true intentions was to tie Edward up, mutilate him, and leave him to bleed to death. So he introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from Farmingdale, New York. Fish promised to hire Edward Budd and his friend Willie, and said he would send for them in a few days. So he failed to show up, but he did send a telegraph to the Budd family apologizing and set a later date. When Albert Fish returned, that's when he met the little girl, Grace Budd. So he apparently changed his intended victim from Edward Budd to Grace Budd and quickly made up a story about having to attend his niece's birthday party. So somehow he convinced the parents to let him take Grace to the birthday party.
It's like when those parents is like, why did you let Michael Jackson?
It's crazy, right?
With Michael Jackson?
It's crazy, right? You let this strange man who you really don't know. He hasn't really done anything, right? Like he's offered their son a job that he hasn't really, come up with, and he's making all these excuses. And now he's, hey, by the way, I have this birthday party. Can I take your little girl with me, even though you don't know much about me? And I'm just this almost 60-year-old man.
Hey, don't believe all those rumors.
Right. So Grace left that day and she never returned. So
you think she's all right?
Obviously not. So, but you know what's crazy is that they didn't arrest him for her disappearance. Initially.
Okay.
The police arrested 66-year-old Superintendent Charles Edward Pope on September 5th, 1930, as a suspect because he was accused by his wife, his estranged wife. So this man, who had nothing to do with Grace Budd's disappearance, he spent 108 days in jail between his arrest and trial on December 22nd, 1930. So he was found not guilty.
Interesting.
So,
did they have DNA back then?
No.
When did DNA come up?
I'm thinking the 70s, 60s, 70s.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when the whole FBI thing started coming up and
Mindhunter stuff.
Yeah, the Mindhunter. Yeah.
Still haven't seen season 2.
Yeah. So it wasn't until November 1934, good 6 years after that, the Albert Fish sent this anonymous letter, right, to her parents, and that obviously led him to Fish.
Anonymous is like, hey, it's me, Albert Fish. Anonymous.
Right. So apparently, the mother, Mrs. Budd, she was illiterate and she could not read the letter, so she had her son read it to her.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine, like, it's like, hey, I got this letter in the mail. Can you help me read it? Because I have no idea what, who it's from.
I told you that I had a neighbor that did that, right?
Oh yes. Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right.
He's not. He's not my neighbor anymore.
Yeah, he couldn't read, right?
No, but he was like a millionaire. He couldn't read. He was like a self-made millionaire.
Yeah.
He just never learned how to read.
Yeah. Hey, he could pay somebody.
Yeah, but he gets stopping you and asking you to read his fucking mail every day.
That's crazy, right? How would you, like, this is the thing that's crazy. How would you not suspect it was this man who was the last man to be, like, he took your little girl with you? But it is crazy. People could be dense when, like, they're not realizing, right?
So what was his cover story?
I don't know.
Like, I turned around, she was gone?
Yeah, apparently she just disappeared. She never came back. I guess in the 20s, I was like, okay, we believe you.
We have 49 other kids. It's all good.
But yeah, that's a little, that's not something you want to get in the mail. A letter of that type of content.
I get weirded out if I get a letter from anyone that's handwritten.
When's the last letter you received?
Years from, like, handwritten. Yeah, years. I've gotten some from, like, weird, like, where they're like they're lazy and they type it and they type it in handwriting fonts. Like, what? That they assign the bottom with their real, like, pen. I've gotten a couple of those, but nah, it's been years.
Yeah,
can't even remember. Probably from, like, my dead grandma, which was crazy because she was dead, so it freaked me out. Just kidding. Oh man. So where are we going with this?
So what's crazy with Albert Fish? Like, he had a really, like, messed up backstory. All right. So let me read you a quick story. Apparently when he was 12 years old, Albert Fish, he met a boy who introduced him to. Do you know what coprophagija? I'm butchering that name.
Probably not. No. Krav Maga.
Phaga.
It's pronounced Krav Maga.
And urolagenia. So this is consuming feces and drinking urine. I guess it's the pleasure of doing that.
It's called a crazy night.
Yeah.
No,
he was introduced to this. And apparently Albert Fish also, around that age, 12 years old, he began to frequent public bathrooms where he would watch younger boys undress in front of him. And then later in life, his fetishes became weirder and weirder, and he began to self-mutilate. So he would ask his own children to repeatedly hit his behind with various objects.
I let this guy have kids.
Yeah, apparently. And so this is the craziest one. So he was known to push needles so deep into his groin that they could not be removed.
I mean, did he sanitize him?
I would hope so.
Because if not,
so there was an X-ray.
If not, I'm cringing.
So there's an because of the infection.
Mm-hmm.
So they did an X-ray during his trial, and they found 12 needles embedded deep in his groin, under his skin, during his trial. So during his trial, psychiatrists, they testified that some of his sexual fetishes included satanism, masochism, exhibitionism, cannibalism, the two other, drinking of urine and eating feces, pedophilia, and something called infibulation.
I understand a couple of those, but no.
Yeah, this guy was all over. Like, this guy could not, like a Playboy was not enough for this guy.
Yeah. Playboy back then.
No.
I was like,
maybe that's what it was, right? Yeah.
Playboy could have saved these
Playboy could have saved these kids.
Yeah.
So next time people try to talk shit about Playboy,
right.
they have been around. Albert Fish would end up on these things. So Fish said on trial, I always had a desire to inflict pain on others and to have others inflict pain on me. I always seemed to enjoy everything that hurt.
He is hilarious. Jesus.
Yeah. This guy was not the best.
Was it Norm Macdonald who did something about it? A little joke where he's like, this guy was a real jerk. Just like,
he was, right?
Downplaying it.
So Albert Fish, if people who've heard of him, and like you mentioned, he was known as a child killer, but he didn't always go after children. So
he wasn't always just killing kids. He used to do some charity work. Volunteered at the food bank.
So apparently around 1910, Albert Fish was working in Wilmington, Delaware. And there he met a 19-year-old man named Thomas Keaton. So he took Keaton.
And he wrote Michael Keaton relation?
No, Keaton. Keddn.
Okay.
Thomas.
Okay, now I feel dumb.
Yeah. He took Keaton to where he was staying. And the two began a sadomasochistic relationship. So that's where they enjoyed beating and taking beatings from each other. So it is unclear whether or not Fish was forcing Keaton to do these things, but in his confession, he implies that the man was intellectually disabled. So apparently, after 10 days of doing this, Fish took Keaton to an old farmhouse where he began to torture him. The torture took place over 2 weeks. So eventually, Fish tied Keaton up and, so get this, cut off half of his penis.
If they did that to me, dude, I'm like, you leaving me with 2.5 inches?
He said,
he really is a jerk.
Fish said he later recalled, I shall never forget his scream or the look he gave me.
Jesus
Christ. The look of like, you're a real jerk for doing this.
Right? Just started saying that all day. Real jerk.
So apparently Fish originally intended to kill Keaton, cut up his body, and take it home. But he feared the hot weather would draw attention to him. So instead...
Wait, the hot weather would what?
Draw attention to him. So if he cut up his body parts and it's so hot...
Because of the smell.
Yeah, obviously the smell.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought like the look of the sun off his face.
It's like, you know what? The way the sun is hitting him, it looks like he just cut up a man and is taking his body parts back to his apartment to eat.
Yeah, it's a very specific look.
It's the way the sun hits you right after you did it. The sun doesn't lie.
I can usually tell.
Yeah. So instead of doing this, since the hot weather draws attention, what Fish did instead, he poured peroxide over the wound, where he had just cut off this gentleman's penis, wrapped it in a Vaseline-covered handkerchief, and left a $10 bill. He kissed Keaton goodbye and left.
I would have left $5.
What's the conversion rate?
I was about to ask, how much money was that in that year?
Actually,
he might have been a very generous tipper.
You think so? $10 in 1910.
I mean, shit.
How much do you think it is? What do you think the conversion rate
60?
is? So
I don't know how much. Do you know it?
Yeah. So you think 60 in today's dollars?
I'm just guessing. I have no idea.
So $10 in 1910 would be the equivalent, and this is 2018, which is close enough.
Yeah.
It's about $264.
Holy shit! I mean, it wasn't that bad. No, I'm just kidding. Fuck. I lied earlier, guys. If he did it to me, I'd still have like 5 inches. And I'd have $264.
So he kissed him goodbye and left. He said he took the first train I could get back home. Never heard what became of him or try to find out.
Cool.
Yeah. So like I said, he's only been officially convicted, tied to 3 murders. One was Grace Budd, which obviously.
You remember that? I think they stopped airing it like years ago. Discovery Channel tried to do the show called like Most Evil or something evil, and it was really disturbing. They would cover like weird, like, because they weren't always serial killers. Sometimes they'd only kill like 2 or 3 people. So I don't know how many before you become a serial killer.
I think it's 2. I want to say 2 or 3. I think the FBI does have a specific. I know you're laughing, but like I think they have a specific number of what's then you considered a serial killer.
Yeah.
And it has to be consecutive. Like, I think it has to be the same way too. I think that's the biggest thing for them. There's got to be a pattern. Yeah. So, have you heard? Just to go on a little bit of a tangent, that the number of serial killers out there has gone down since the 70s. I mean, since the 80s. Like, I think it was the peak of the 80s. Yeah. But what do you think that is? Like, there's a lot of different theories.
Surveillance.
You think surveillance is more? Yeah. There's more.
I think it has to be surveillance. It's hard to do a lot of that guy from Empire couldn't even fake his own beating. How's he gonna run around killing people and not get caught?
How did he get caught? Like, I mean, how did they say they know that he was lying?
They had the security camera footage of the guys like buying weird shit at the store.
Oh, okay.
And he wrote him a check.
Yeah.
Instead of paying cash. And it's just those guys, like, I think they came forward, right? I think that security camera footage was a way to question those guys. Like, hey, these are the suspects.
Yeah.
So they were on security camera footage for helping him,
Yeah.
So they're like, as soon as they pretty much like, hey, he made us do it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Because I think they were like his gym trainers.
I don't know.
I think so. But come on, you wrote a check too with your name to these guys.
Yeah,
the same guys.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more surveillance. You're right. I mean, that is one of the theories that I've read. That obviously there's more evidence. There's always, like you mentioned before, there's DNA. There's a lot more DNA evidence.
Yeah.
So I think you commit 1 murder, maybe 2, but you usually get caught. You don't have enough time to commit, what's considered a serial killer. So. You get shot down before you hit your prime, John.
Then you go today. You just go to see the movie Batman.
Well, that's another thing.
Yeah.
They also think that a lot of potential serial killers they become mass shooters now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe because you know what, a lot of them you find out like the serial killers, they're actually like really intelligent. They're just crazy.
Actually, it's the opposite. They're of average intelligence.
Maybe I'm just thinking like everybody's Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, no, that's a misconception. No, they're actually of average to below.
I'm basing this all on like one movie that was made. When did it come out? Like 80 something, 89,
91. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
It's a really good movie. But no, not all. Most serial killers don't really have a.
I just thought they were all geniuses who were just like they just read.
They just didn't reach the.
What was the
potential.
book Mel Gibson read in the conspiracy movie?
Oh, the conspiracy theory movie.
The Rye.
The Catcher of the Rye.
Yeah, is that really a thing that serial killers read? Like, or is that like a myth?
I don't know.
I think one of my friends told me that.
And
I'm basing that on nothing but the conversation. And I go, I remember it in the movie Conspiracy Theory. He couldn't stop buying it, but he wasn't a serial killer.
No, I think it was just his weird obsession.
Yeah, he was a paranoid conspiracy guy.
Yeah, it was just a weird obsession with it.
Yeah,
because the book's about this.
But I think there was. You know what? I think there was a serial killer who was obsessed with it. I think.
Catching the Rye.
I think. I don't know.
I can't remember. We'll probably go over one of the weeks.
Or again, I'm getting this from. Don't rely on us for facts. Again, we're just gonna keep saying that. But if you want our fax number,
it's 947.
Just give out one of our friends' numbers and be like, but you got to call it all day.
Right.
And make sure, call it at least 20 times a day.
All right. Nah, we would never do that to any of our friends.
Yeah, we might.
We might if they kiss us off. Nah, we would never do that. That would.
There's one or two that we'd probably do it for. I told you what I always wanted to do because I kept the resources to do it. What? I was like, if somebody pisses me off, I go, I'm gonna you'll change your phone number by the end of the week. So I'm gonna I'll put a campaign together to have just people like I'll put like their car on Craigslist for like $100. And I'll put it like on every site. I've always wanted, like, if somebody really pissed me off.
Yeah.
Oh, and I would have like 3 contractors like working with me to to get this done. I was like working around the clock. I'm not joking. If somebody really pissed me off, I go, you know what? I go, you like your phone number? Forget it. Just don't even remember it anymore. You won't have it at the end of the week.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, that's the reason I'm giving John a $2 an hour raise now. To not want to piss him off. I've had my number
I have not done that, but it has crossed my mind.
I've had my number for like 15 years. I don't want to have to change it.
I've had it for a while.
Yeah. It would have been annoying, right, to have to change your phone number?
Yeah. I get like spam stuff still. I'm like, I'm still not changing it.
No, yeah.
How many scam calls do you get in a day?
You know what? I don't know because I tend not to answer weird phone calls.
Well, what service do you have?
I have Sprint.
Well, T-Mobile is what I have, and it comes out as scam likely.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Dude, I swear, when next time it comes in and I'm in the mood, just answer and we'll fuck with him. I'm just going to be like, Mr. Likely? And I'm just going to be like, Mr. Likely? I'm just like, they're just like, I'm never calling this guy again. Is that deal gonna go through, Mr. Likely?
Right?
I need you on the ball. Like, I'm gonna hold this guy accountable.
You're following up with them like every week.
How can I reach you directly, Mr. Likely? No. Suddenly I'm talking from like a guy from the 20s. Mr. Likely.
No. So. Nah, I doubt so.
You see?
All right, circle back to Albert Fish.
Oh, wait. We're playing a game, right? Is the answer Albert Fish?
So like I said, he's only been officially tied to 3 murders. Although, you know,
that's all right.
There's suspect up to 100. He might have been responsible to 100.
He just wanted to one up OJ before OJ.
So there, you know, so he got arrested for the little girl Bud's murder, but there was 2 other crimes that were discovered after his arrest. Mm-hmm. One was of a 9-year-old named Francis McDonald. So during the night of July 14th, 1924, Francis McDonald, who was 9 years old at the time, was reported missing by his parents. I bet you it
was hot outside.
It was really hot, July 14th, a hot night. He was reported missing by his parents. He failed to return home after playing catch with friends in the Port Richmond neighborhood of Staten Island. A search was organized and his body was found hanging by a tree.
This was in New York?
It was in Staten Island, yes.
So, I mean, everything he did was in New York?
Yeah, pretty much. That's why he was called, what was one of his nicknames that I mentioned earlier? He was called the Brooklyn Vampire.
Okay.
That was one of his nicknames.
Cool.
It's not a nickname you want to have. The Brooklyn Vampire. So the little boy's body was found hanging by a tree.
Could be the name of a band, though.
The Brooklyn Vampires?
Brooklyn Vampire. Or just singular. You know how they do that?
Oh, yeah. Brooklyn Vampire.
Brooklyn Vampire. Yeah. I'm going to see Brooklyn Vampire tonight.
Yeah. Or you can make it really confusing and who's the one that essentially it's just one guy?
Carrot Top?
No.
I told you what I want my rapper name to be, right?
What was
if I was gonna do it?
No.
Dow Jones.
Dow Jones.
Seriously.
Sounds like a rapper name. Yeah.
It does, right?
Yeah,
I thought about it like a year ago. I'm like, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Dow Jones.
Yeah. No. What is the band name of
Hansel?
Trent Reznor.
Who's that again?
Trent Reznor.
I don't know. I know it sounds very familiar.
I'm blanking on.
I don't know anything about new music.
9 Inch Nails.
Okay, I'm not saying that was new, but I'm saying like off topic. Like, don't ask me about new music.
Oh no,
I don't know anything.
We won't have a music corner ever in this podcast.
Is Britney Spears still going?
I flooded a music segment for John, and he promptly hung up the phone on me. Before he did, he threatened to expose my phone number to the internet. I never brought up that idea ever again.
I think I could do it in 48 hours.
That's how much John hated the idea of a music segment. So yeah I know you're no, but like 9 Inch Nails, like it's just Trent Reznor, isn't it? That's one that was confusing.
I think so. I guess the name I just didn't get. I think I would hear like their hits on like local radio, but other than that, I didn't.
At weird parties you would go to.
Yeah.
It's like, who's playing all these Nine Inch Nails songs?
Right. This is weird for an Eyes Wide Shut party. Should we be playing something a little more?
This quinceañera is getting a little weird about this Nine Inch Nails song.
You know what? That sounds about right, though. Like, there's totally quinceañeras that are playing Nine Inch Nails, like today, that it probably happened today.
Yeah, you think so?
It probably happens every weekend. That's happening.
So
You know it's true.
So the Brooklyn Vampire, a great band name, but also the nickname of one of the nicknames of Albert Fish. So to go back to Francis McDonald,
Dude, that would be a good band name too.
Yeah,
Albert Fish.
Albert Fish. Yeah, I'm sure that's happened. I'm sure there's been like some band that's made a song.
Can I just get a job naming bands?
I don't know how much it would pay. I don't know if it would pay more than your Malarkey.
Yeah, I was gonna say
salary, John.
It's $10 a week, also.
So Francis McDonald's body was found hanging by a tree in a wooded area near his home. He had been sexually assaulted, then strangled with his suspenders. So according to an autopsy,
He wore suspenders.
if he wore suspenders back then, John. Yeah. According to an autopsy, McDonald had also suffered extensive lacerations to his legs and abdomen.
Is this a child?
Yeah, 9-year-old.
And I feel bad.
Why?
I
About
made
what?
fun of his suspenders.
Oh, suspenders. I'm sure there's Albert Fish did it worse, John.
Yeah.
He let he.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So
I would hope so.
So apparently he had suffered extensive lacerations to his legs and abdomen, and his left hamstring had almost entirely been stripped of his flesh. Fish refused to claim responsibility for this, although he later stated that he intended to castrate the boy, but fled when he heard someone approaching the area. McDonald's friends told police that he was taken by an elderly man with a gray mustache. A neighbor also told the police he observed the boy with a similar looking man walking along a grassy path into the nearby woods. So the little boy's mother, Anna McDonald, said she saw the same man earlier that day. She told reporters he came shuffling down the street, mumbling to himself and making, this is from her, queer motions with his hands. I saw his thick gray hair and his drooping gray mustache. Everything about him seemed faded and gray. So that's why the description resulted in the mysterious stranger becoming known as the Gray Man. So that was how he got one of his nicknames.
I've heard the Gray Man one.
Yeah, so the McDonald murder remained unsolved until the murder of Grace Butt. So when several eyewitnesses, among them the Staten Island farmer Hans Keel, positively identified Albert Fish as the odd stranger seen around Port Richmond on the day of Francis McDonald's disappearance, Richmond County District Attorney Thomas J. Walsh announced his intention to seek an indictment against Fish for the boy's murder. At first, Fish denied the charges. It was only in March 1935, at the conclusion of his trial for the Butt murder and his confession to the killing of Billy Gaffney, which I'll get to right after this, that Fish confirmed to investigators that he also raped and murdered Francis McDonald. When the McDonald confession was made public, the New York Daily Mirror wrote that disclosure solidified Fish's reputation as the most vicious child slayer in criminal history. So the other murder that he was tied to, John, was Billy Gaffney, which isn't mentioned in the other story. So on February 11th, 1927, 3-year-old Billy Beaton and his 12-year-old brother were playing in the apartment hallway in Brooklyn with 4-year-old Billy Gaffney. When the 12-year-old left for his apartment, both younger boys disappeared. Beaton was found later on the roof of the apartments. When asked what happened to Gaffney, Beaton said the boogeyman took him. Gaffney's body was never recovered.
Sounds like a horror movie, right?
Yeah. So his body was never recovered. So initially, so there was another serial killer, Peter Kudinaski, was a suspect in the boy's murder. Then Joseph Meehan, a motorman on a Brooklyn trolley, saw a picture of Fish in a newspaper and identified him as the old man that he saw on February 11th, 1927. The old man had been trying to quiet a little boy sitting with him on the trolley. The boy was not wearing a jacket, was crying for his mother, and was dragged by the man on and off the trolley. Beaton's description of the boogeyman matched Fish. Police matched his description of the child to Billy Gaffney. Detectives of the Manhattan Missing Persons Bureau were able to establish that Fish was employed as a house painter by a Brooklyn real estate company during February 1927, and that on the day of Billy Gaffney's disappearance, he was working at a location a few miles from where the boy was abducted. Fish claimed the following in a letter to his attorney. So this guy likes to write letters, John.
I was going to say, we're going to another letter.
Another fish letter, John. I brought him to the Riker Avenue dumps.
Hey, that would be a cool name for a band. Fish. No one's done that yet.
Actually, nobody's done. Yeah, FIS. Yeah, nobody's done fish.
All right, keep going.
All right, so this is the fish letter. I brought him to the Riker Avenue dumps. There is a house that stands alone, not far from where I took him. I took the G-boy there, stripped him naked and tied his hands and feet and gagged him with a piece of dirty rag I picked out of the dump. Then I burned his clothes, threw his shoes in the dump. Then I walked back and took trolley to 59th Street at 2 a.m. and walked home from there. Next day about 2 p.m., I took tools, a good heavy cat of 9 nails, homemade, short handle, cut one of my belts in half, slit these half in 6 strips about 8-inch long. I whipped his bare behind till the blood ran from his legs. I cut off his ears, nose, slit his mouth from ear to ear, gouged out his eyes. He was dead then. I stuck the knife in his belly and held my mouth to his body and drank his blood. I picked up 4 old potato sacks and gathered a pile of stones. Then I cut him up. I had a grip with me. I put his nose, ears, and a few slices of his belly in the grip. Then I cut him through the middle of his body, just below his belly button, then through his legs, about 2 inches below his behind. I put this in my grip with a lot of paper. I cut off the head, feet, arms, hands, and the legs below the knee. This I put in sacks, weighed with stones, tied the ends, and threw them into the pools of slimy water you will see all along the road going to North Beach. Water is 3 to 4 feet deep. They sank at once. I came home with my meat. I had the front of his body I liked best. His monkey and peewees and a nice little fat behind to roast in the oven and eat. I made a stew out of his ears, nose, pieces of his face and belly. I put onions, carrots, turnips, celery, salt, and pepper. It was good.
Oh, celery?
Yeah. Then I split the cheeks of his behind open, cut off his monkey and peewees, and washed them first. I put
what are peewees?
I don't know what he means. Maybe he's talking about his pajamas. I don't know.
All right.
I put strips of bacon on each cheek of his behind and put them in the oven. Then I picked 4 onions, and when meat had roasted about 1/4 of an hour, I poured about a pint of water over it for gravy and put it in the onions. At frequent intervals.
That's not how you use gravy.
Right? At frequent intervals, I basted his behind with a wooden spoon so the meat would be nice and juicy. In about 2 hours, it was nice and brown, cooked through. I never ate any roast turkey that tasted half as good as his sweet fat little behind.
This guy was like a foodie then.
He was like a terrible foodie. I ate every bit of the meat in about 4 days. His little bunkie was as sweet as a nut, but his peewees I could not chew. Threw him in the toilet. Maybe he means his private parts.
Yeah, probably. He's basically like Guy Ferrero, right? Who's the guy's name?
Guy Ferrero.
Who's the guy? The douchey guy?
Guy Fieri?
Guy Ferrero.
He's trying to say he's the serial killer, isn't Guy Fieri?
Start some rumors.
I don't think Guy Fieri would ever want to be compared to Albert Fish.
I mean, you're both foodies.
Right. That's the one link you made with them. So this guy was, he was
a real jerk. Yeah.
This guy, you would never want him, as your babysitter.
I mean, it wouldn't be. You wouldn't call him first.
Yeah, you would have to go. You would have to go down pretty down on your list.
3 or 4,
at least 3 or 4 before you call them. You're really desperate. You just want to go to the movies.
It's like, but he's pretty cheap. It's like,
yeah. So yeah, pretty despicable man.
Yeah,
glad he's dead, right? Aren't you just glad he's dead?
Yeah.
It's one of those, like...
Or is he? Conspiracy time. No, I'm just kidding.
Nah, he was murdered.
Oh, he was murdered?
Nah, it's just playing. By the state, John.
Oh, okay.
Maybe one of those...
are we gonna get into the death penalty now?
That's actually the next...
Holy shit.
Nah, I'm just joking.
I was like... Yeah, thanks for the great stories. Jesus Christ.
No, he was executed.
Matt's like, I'm just gonna depress everyone.
No, he was
just make everyone disgusted. Jesus.
No, he was he was executed. So
even for me, and I'm pretty dark. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I mean, I know. You find it like Matt's just rambling on his own. He's not reading anything. I just go, "What'd you do this weekend?" And like, you just said that.
So to end this segment, Fish was executed in the electric chair at Sing Sing prison on January 16th, 1936. Do you know what his last words were?
No. I'm trying to think of something funny, but no.
His last words were, "I don't even know why I'm here." So we'll leave you with that.